This video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. What's up, guys? Michael here. Succession's long-awaited return is one of this year's banner events for TV fans, promising another round of Roy-on-Roy action set amidst the lush surroundings of the economic elite. There are lots of obviously appealing things about this show. It's got a killer cast.
They're dead to me. No one goes sniffing around my f***ing panties.
To viciously funny dialogue.
Well, like, could you maybe get a little experience at like a CVS or something?
Yeah, or just like nickel hand jobs under a bridge.
And the constant source of excessively tall entertainment that is Cousin Greg.
A person can fit through there. A person can definitely fit through that window. A small person, an attack child.
It's not surprising that we're drawn to the life and times of this ultra-rich snake pit of a family. After all, Hollywood has cut its teeth making shows and movies that celebrate how freaking great it is to be rich. And at first glance, it might seem easy to lump Succession in with them. But if you look closely at how it depicts the world of the 1%, you'll find it's doing something very different. We'll explain in this Wisecrack Edition on Succession. Does money make you miserable? And spoiler alert for the first 2 seasons of Succession. And before we dive in, I want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. In case you missed it, Raid is an awesome hero collector RPG where you can collect champions and wage battles against friends or other players online. Here at Wisecrack, we've been playing Raid for a while, which means it's hard to pick a favorite of all the champions I've collected so far. But if I had to pick my top 5 favorite champions, I'm tempted to go by the coolest names. After all, what's in a Rose or in a Raid champion? A champion by any other name is just as powerful for your clan. So, without further ado, number 1, Masked Fearmonger. He's Friday the 13th themed, and he literally strikes fear into his opponents. Case closed. Number 2, Ursula the Mourner. She protects your clan from damage and increases the damage you deal out to your opponents at the same time. Number 3, Lydia the Death Siren. The perfect name for a one-person band, and her Siren's Well skills help you easily clear the Doom Tower and collect artifacts. Number 4, Sir Nicholas, because that's such a cheerful name. But don't be fooled, he can also freeze and debuff your enemies with ease. Number 5, Krisk the Ageless, because to me, agelessness would rule. Then again, so would Krisk's Centuried Vigor, which can protect you and your allies during crucial battle moments. There's always something new to discover in the game. For instance, this month's Halloween lineup lands soon, and it includes huge rewards, new tournament options, and special fragment events. Plus, nothing says spooky season like collecting a new Halloween-themed champion, which I can't wait to see. And here's a pro tip to help you when you get started in the game. When you want to level up your champions, try farming the campaign. Grind your XP, collect silver and artifacts, and boom, you're ready to really get into the action with even more powerful champions. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan my QR code, and you'll get an epic hero, Chonaru, who is amazing in the Doom Tower, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. I don't know why people say we look alike. I don't see it at all. I guess it's the eyes. These rewards are available only for the next 30 days and only for new players. So click the link in the description to download the game for iOS, Android, or PC today. And now, back to the show. It's impossible to talk about Succession without talking about money, because every scene is basically drowning in dollar signs. The Roy family are media moguls styled after the Murdochs, who lord over a vast empire anchored by amusement parks and a reactionary right-wing news channel.
You know, Waystar Royco? We do hate speech and roller coasters.
As a result, they live in a world that is totally defined by wealth. They wear the finest suits and take private jets from luxurious penthouses to countryside mansions. They eat the fanciest food.
Got so good.
They drink the fanciest wine.
Hey, Greg. What are you drinking? I'm not sure. It's a rosé. It's not my favorite.
They have extravagant leisure activities.
Might as well just throw a grenade at the pigs.
Every single centimeter of their lives has been tailor-made to ensure they get only the best of the best. Taken as a whole, the show paints a picture of what it looks like to live with all the money in the world. Conceptually, it's a fantasy we've seen played out on screen lots of times before. From popular TV series like Dynasty, Dallas, Gossip Girl, Billions, and Big Little Lies, to hit movies like Crazy Rich Asians and The Wolf of Wall Street. How the top 1% lives is a major part of our media diet. Some offer a pure celebration of excess, while some cast a more critical eye. But pretty much all of them give us the vicarious thrill of watching the filthy rich play with their money. It's pretty straightforward wish fulfillment. Most of us live the majority of our lives penned in by bank balances that are never as high as we'd like. So it's no wonder we lust after the idea of a life where all those limitations just melt away and we can do whatever we want all the time.
Look, here's the thing about being rich, okay? It's fucking great. Okay, it's like being a superhero, only better. You get to do what you want, the authorities can't really touch you, you get to wear a costume, but it's designed by Armani.
There's a term for this, wealth porn, which describes media that exists primarily so we can salivate over designer clothes and luxe apartments. Apologies if you thought wealth porn is when a dude f***ed a bag of money. The term was coined by journalist Gary Poole in the year 2000. It describes the fawning news coverage of the uber wealthy in publications like Fortune and Forbes. The term caught on, which makes sense considering shows like Cribs were at their peak. Never forget that Tommy Lee had a Starbucks in his house.
Tommy Lee has a Starbucks in his house?
Cribs, baby, watch it.
Like a whole Starbucks with workers and everything?
Shows like Entourage and Gossip Girl were also pretty brazen about their desire to provide exactly this sort of economic escapism, happily framing every angle of their characters' material wealth. But the term wealth porn becomes more loaded when it's applied to media that's ostensibly lampooning this excess while arguably just indulging in it. The Wolf of Wall Street and Billions, for instance, have both continually divided critics as to where they fall on the spectrum. So why are we so attracted to stories set within society's upper crust? Most obviously, wealth looks really good on screen, from lush apartments to designer clothes to exotic locales. And the cinematography typically luxuriates in it. Cameras whirl to capture the madcap excess or glide serenely across each perfectly manicured set. But that's not quite what we get in Succession. Their apartments might be huge and their dinners might cost more than any car I've ever owned, but the world of the Roys rarely looks all that desirable. Visually, this comes from the guerrilla style of the cinematography. The show uses free-roaming cameramen to create a voyeuristic and lo-fi aesthetic. This adds a DIY clumsiness to a designer world. It also avoids the indulgent, poised style of most media about the 1%. One of the show's directors, Mark Mylod, told IndieWire that when filming the Roys in any opulent location, he always makes sure the character is leading the cinematography, rather than having a camera pan lovingly across a fancy set. It's almost an anti-aesthetic in terms of the craft, he says. The show purposely avoids depicting wealth as synonymous with beauty. The frequently unflattering lighting shows every dark under-eye circle and wrinkle to perfection, and the beige color palette becomes overwhelming in its blandness. As series creator Jesse Armstrong describes, their lives are somewhat denuded of color. In short, for once, being filthy rich doesn't look filthy sexy, which, to be clear, isn't the name for a type of porn where a guy grinds up on a big pile of dirt and twigs. And importantly, the series used on-set wealth advisors to help the cast fully inhabit the world of the 1%. Grounding it in the day-to-day realism of life as a rich person, the show is able to effectively de-eroticize the whole thing. Well, almost the whole thing. Brian Cox can still get it anytime, anywhere. For example, one piece of advice the cast received was about how they made their way in and out of the helicopters, which the Roys use like Ubers. You'll notice that none of them ever duck the way we would expect most people to. That's because when you've been traveling that way since childhood, it's as natural as stepping onto a train or climbing into a car, which is maybe why Kendall is so comfortable inside a helicopter that he occasionally tries to drunkenly pilot one. Because here's the thing. If you've been rich your whole life, the idea of being rich just isn't all that interesting. Cinderella stories like Crazy Rich Asians and rise and fall tales like Wolf of Wall Street are so effective because they give the audience an avatar who enters the world of the wealthy with the same doe-eyed wonder as we would. Because wealth porn is really for those of us who will never experience that kind of opulence or unfettered freedom in real life. In contrast, Succession demystifies wealth. The show pulls back the curtain to reveal the drudgery and degradation required to create this seamless luxury, like when the Roys are getting ready to have a decadent feast. Rather than simply having their tasty treats appear on screen fully formed, the show depicts every bit of the painstaking work their staff takes to prepare and serve it. And then, Logan gets mad about a bad smell and orders the whole thing destroyed before a single bite has been eaten.
And I don't want all this It sat around in the stink. Pizza! We'll have pizza!
And so we get to watch that same army of service employees clear away a few rent checks worth of haute cuisine. And when Succession does show a Cinderella story, it's not quite such a whirlwind romance. Connor, whose best friend is Ferris Bueller, is initially paying Willa to spend time with him as an escort before the two of them decide to go steady. But even after, the relationship remains transactional. Willa shacks up with a delusional rich guy twice her age because it's the only realistic hope she has of funding her own creative ambitions, no matter how ill-advised they might be.
I don't need to see the reviews, I don't care.
Exactly, the play's brilliant. Who cares what some old white dude from the New York Times says?
It's easy to write Willa off as a sly opportunist, but Connor is equally complicit, lording his money over her to get what he wants. And that brings us to the second part of wealth porn's appeal, because it's never just about the pretty things that money can buy, but the power that comes with it.
Enough of this will make you invincible. Able to conquer the world and eviscerate your enemies.
Yet another rich guy who thinks money makes you a de facto superhero, which recent comic book cinema has confirmed.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
But even if you aren't building Batmobiles or bulletproof armor, wealth gives you immunity from the rules which govern most people's lives. Any problem you encounter can be whisked away in a flurry of dollar bills. Even mess-ups like, coke-fueled vehicular homicide.
You'd have to buy out the entire cabin and the first-class flight attendant.
I bought the airline. It seemed neater.
There is a somewhat dangerous appeal in the idea of being so strong that we can bend the world around us to our whims, and the Roys are all high on this particular power fantasy. One of the great joys of watching Succession is the stiletto-sharp dialogue, which turns each conversation into a knife fight.
He's sure you'll understand, but he's going to need to offer an alternative face for this discussion.
Alternative face? What the f does that mean? If I drop my pants, I can show you an alternative face. How does that sound?
And every meeting into a series of vicious insults and perfectly delivered put-downs.
Pay transparency, bargaining rights, just nasty, tangly shit. And it's not a body pit, whatever the body pit is. It's a muesli pit.
But these scenes are never just there for us to enjoy the punchlines. Well, okay, maybe occasionally they are.
Tom, it's tough to have to tell you like this, but I'm in a sexual relationship with your mother. She talks in her sleep.
But these moments also give us an insight into what life at the top is like. The Roys' brutal way of talking to one another is a manner of establishing dominance. Generally bored of their extreme wealth, the power it gives them is the real high. And it's a vital part of their identity, too. They all have to believe that they are corporate warriors, battering their way to the top of the food chain through cunning, resilience, and ruthlessness. In reality, the Roys are rarely as impressive as they think they are. They like to imagine themselves playing four-dimensional chess as they plot and scheme their way towards world domination. But the truth is that the Roys are constantly bumping up against their own shortcomings.
She thinks she's smarter than she is. Roman could actually be good, but nowhere near right now. Kendall's, I don't know. It's like you put him in a big diaper and now he can himself whenever he likes. He has all the shots, but he doesn't know when to play them.
Kendall is an insecure mess, and torn between a desperation for his father's approval and a furious desire to take revenge upon him.
You have a hard time finding a happy medium between worshiping him and wanting to kill him.
He's vaguely pathetic, even needing a personal driver for his badass motorcycle. His anxiety leads him to bungle 2 separate coup attempts, and it takes nearly losing everything for him to finally take decisive action. Roman has his own inadequacy issues, which have left him emotionally detached and sexually, incapacitated.
We never f***.
Oh, yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
He covers this with an air of abrasive bravado, but when push comes to shove, he is still a little boy, terrified of his father.
I swear to God, Dad, if you bring him back, I am walking. Back to my office to sulk.
Siobhan often seems like the smartest and most confident sibling, but even she continually overplays her hand and finds herself caught up in Logan's games.
Oh, for sake, Dad, just tell him it's gonna be me.
And then there's Connor, who is so insulated by wealth that he has effectively lost touch with reality. He's a grown man living out quixotic fantasies until the money runs out.
But you have to quit your campaign.
And at the end of the day, every one of these kids just wants a kiss from daddy.
Daddy kiss you, will daddy kiss you, will daddy Roy kiss?
The truth is that none of the Roys are the Machiavellian geniuses that they think they are. When their plans succeed, it's rarely because they intellectually outmaneuvered their opponents or executed some daring scheme. It's just because they are really, really rich.
Because I'm going to stuff your mouth with so much money you're going to gold figurines. Non-disclosure agreement, non-voting shares, non-compete. I'm going to lock you in a golden cage, you with a silver dildo, and pay you so much you sing whatever song I want.
Clearly, Kendall imagines himself as the unstoppable boardroom warrior, laying waste to his enemies and seizing what he wants. In reality, he's just a rich kid playing with his dad's money. He wasn't able to persuade, seduce, or intimidate his opponent into a deal, so he's just throwing money at him until he agrees. There's no merit to his victory, no proof of talent or character. He wins, as the Roys always do, simply because of how rich he is.
Yeah. Money wins.
And that's ultimately who the Roys are. And it's why the show's able to avoid the wealth porn trap, which is what it's called when you think you're just gonna hump some money, but then it turns out it's a trap set by the host of To Catch a Predator, Chris Hansen. Everything in the Roys' life looks expensive, and yet practically none of it seems desirable. It's clear that we aren't watching the masters of the universe go about their godly business. Instead, they're just a bunch of egocentric, insecure assholes lording their power so that they can feel important.
Really good effort, really. Quite tremendous. So take this back to your life. It's $250,000.
And even their most extravagant moments tend to be kind of pathetic. They'll buy out an entire theme park to win back their children's love.
Thank you for closing down the park for us, Sophie. She's having a great birthday. She got to meet Snow Joe and...
Or barter holidays with their mother to save their dad a piece of real estate. Ultimately, all of their adventures boil down to greedy squabbles over extra dollars.
You can threaten to stuff 1,000,000 severed dicks into my ball bag, but the actual fact is, we're persuading more and more shareholders every day that we offer them just a slightly better chance for them to make a little bit more money on their f***ing dollar, and that's all that this is.
Their world, for all its luxurious furnishings, is cold, empty, and relentlessly petty. And so are they. Which is kind of what makes them so compelling. We get to see the broken humanity that they've tried to paint over in Gold Leaf. The parts of them that are desperate for acceptance, terrified of failure, and haunted by childhood demons. And this is actually pretty fitting. While a lot of us might equate massive wealth with happiness, a number of studies suggest things are more complicated. There's conflicting data, but one influential study actually found that money stops quote-unquote buying happiness once you've reached a $75,000 salary. What's more, a striking number of billionaires become clinically depressed upon hitting it big. Some researchers think that this is because material wealth can isolate you from other people, leading you to value independence over human connection. And that's possibly because owning lots of fancy makes you feel more competitive with those around you. This kind of isolation and lack of human connection is rife throughout Succession. We see it in the jumpy, dislocated camera moves and sterile environments, and in the way the characters treat each other. When a recently sort of kidnapped Roman tries to share his feelings with his siblings, he's roundly mocked for showing even a trace of vulnerability.
Our feelings? How am I the mature one here?
We don't have any feelings. What are you talking about?
In this way, rather than gawking at their lavish lifestyles or brilliant power moves, the show reveals the characters' deeply damaged cores. Their pettiness, their jealousy, their constant self-sabotage. And there's nothing pornographic about it, however much we enjoy watching them screw each other.
I was from every direction.
But what do you guys think? Does the life of the Roys still look pretty good to you? Or does Succession have you thinking that maybe life in the 1% ain't all it's cracked up to be? Let us know in the comments. Huge thanks to all of our patrons, and be sure to check out our podcast. Bear hug that subscribe button like you're trying to steal your father's empire, and don't forget to ring that bell. And as always, thanks for watching. Later.